Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. As I mentioned, I'm going to record this session and then allow others to view it if they haven't viewed it or reference to go back and review this session. I will also be providing the PowerPoint presentation and then another checklist document. And then, of course, at the time, if you want to schedule some for me to work with you one-on-one on the year-end closeout, we can do that as well. I just want to give you the information and you can determine if you want to try it on your own or reach out to support. Okay, so as part of this process, there is some prep work involved with the finance, with the HR payroll, and we're going to cover each of those sections that are listed there. Then we're going to review open documents, and what that means is like requisitions or any invoices if you are using invoices, and then actually closing out the fiscal year, which means creating the year-end journal entries and then posting the new year journal entries. We're not going to actually I'm not going to show you an example of this being posted because it's a fairly simple process, but I am going to just show you what it would entail. Okay, so we're going to start on finance first. And there's a couple of fields within the organization record that we're going to want to review, and I'll explain what those fields are, as well as the department record. And so the department record also contains requisitions, but if it doesn't change for each department, then you don't need to make a change in the department record. The organization record will, the system will take that value. Then we're also going to look at some date sensitive fields within these, within the setup, as well as the next year start and month day. And so when we look at those fields, it'll make more sense. So let's go right into the system setup of the organization. So from here, we're going to actually go to System, Setup, and Organization, and we're going to go to Section 4. Within Section 4, it has these fields. The ones highlighted in red are the ones that we are referring to. So for example, payment current fiscal year end month. So this is saying that we're going to leave July open through the 31st for users to be able to enter payments within the current fiscal year, which is 2018. And the reason why we may leave it in July is because there might be some payments that post in the bank rec or the bank statement that still need to be recorded. So we just want to leave it open to allow the user to enter that information. And then payment next fiscal year start month. This one says January, but as you can see, we left it that way because it is an error. It really should be July. That's why it's important for the users to review these fields. And then the direct payment. So those are the direct payments within accounts payable, the current fiscal year end month, end day, and then the next fiscal year start month and start day. And then employee payments. So I'm just going to show you within the system where that's at. So right now I'm using this system, which is a demo or a test system. I'm going to go to System, Setup, and Fiscal Year Status. I'm going to click Go so it opens up that record. I'm going to open this. And, oops, I'm sorry, I went to the wrong one. I'm supposed to go to Organization. Sorry about that. So here I'm going to minimize these sections. I'm going to go to Section 4, and then these fields are listed here and then here. So in this case, I did correct it so that way next payment for next fiscal year it should be July. Okay, now the next item is the requisition. So telling the system when requisitions can be processed. So as I mentioned before, the system record will supersede anything done within the department. However, if you have department records that differ, then you're going to want to set that up here. So in this case, what we're saying is we want the system to use the system record since we're leaving these blank. And so where that takes place is if we come back here and we go to section 3, and we have those fields down here. Requisition current year and month. So we're saying that the requisitions can be entered through June 30th in the current fiscal year, and we want to start entering them in on May 1st for the next fiscal year. So say you may have like, you're a larger district or even just a school, but you only want them to enter requisitions in the current fiscal year through June 15th because you're trying to close out the year. So in that case, you would want to change this to the 15th. So that way they're locked out from entering in requisitions. Okay, the next item is accounts receivable. So this one is actually in the department record for AR invoices. So if you're using invoices, which some schools are, like an example could be that they're using it to invoice for the lease assistance fund, you're going to want to make sure that you go to the setup department and make the changes to these fields. So let me show you where that's at. I'm going to leave this open because we're probably going to come back to this. So we're going to go to finance, setup, department, and then departments. I'm going to click go. And in this case, you can see up at the top what kind of items are within each department. So here for purchasing, they only have access to the vendor requisitions. So for invoicing, I'm going to go ahead and click on finance. And here it's saying go to section 6. So I am going to minimize these. And here are the fields for invoicing. So what I'm saying is I want to be able to invoice through July 15th because I need it open up until then. And then for the next fiscal year, I want it available by July 1st. Now we're going to also look at AR receipts. So this is the one that most of us perform activity, and this is recording receipts in the system. So we're going to go to the organization record for this. So I do have that menu still open. And this one is in section 3. Okay. There we go. So here I'm going to go to section 3. And the fields that we're referring to are AR receipt. And come down here. So these ones I have open through July 31st. Again, because I do record after the fact, so that's why I have it open until then. And then next fiscal year starting July 1st. If you need assistance with any of this setup, please reach out to customer support. We want to make sure that there is a review that it's meeting the standards that you need for your organization. And then finally, the last piece is journal entries and budget transfers. And this is going to be within finance, setup, and department. And it's the same type of fields where you identify the current year and month and end day, and the next year start month and start day. So this is for journal entries, and these ones are for budget transfers. So just to show you real quick, we're going to switch back to the department, and that is within section 7 and 8. The journal entries are here. And I actually extended it all the way out to September 30th. And then budget transfers. That one I should have it done by July 31st. So I left it that way. And this can be changed at any point in time. This is just at minimum what you would like to establish. Okay, now the next thing that we're going to go over is account code cleanup. So account code cleanup, this piece really can be done at any point in time. It's just your preference on whether you want those account codes to be limiting them from being carried over year after year. So the first item that we're going to go over is the account component. So if you have an account component that is no longer going to be used in the following fiscal year, you're going to want to enter an end date by going into Finance, Setup, Chart of Accounts, and Account Components. You open up the record and you enter the end date. So some ways that this comes in handy is, say you're closing out a bank account, and so you'll want to make sure that that account code does not roll over. You'll enter the end date here, and then when you roll over your account codes, that particular object code, no matter how many funds it's tied to, will not roll over. So that's a quick way of helping with this cleanup. Now the next step is actually looking at the account codes. So this is the string. There's several ways to deal with this. The first is if you want to delete an account code. The only way you can delete an account code is if it doesn't have any activity. So sometimes where that comes into play is, say you have account codes that don't follow the UCOA, so you're going to want to delete those. As long as they don't have activity, you can do that. If it does have activity, then you're going to want it expire. And the way that the system works with expiring is you open up that account code. There's a field down here called date expired. You'll enter that date, and what the system will do is it'll roll forward for 3 years, and then it will be removed. I guess the other option that you can do is you can identify those account codes that you want to delete but have activity or transactions within this fiscal year. You can roll them over, and then in the new fiscal year delete them there. So after you're done cleaning up your account codes, and it's not a requirement, it's only if depending on your preference. So now we're going to actually create the fiscal year. The first step is schoolAbility does create the system level year, which that should be done at the end of this week. If you need it sooner because you want to work on your fiscal year rollover, please let me know and I'll put a rush on it. It doesn't take long. It's just Jackie, my coworker, she's actually been out sick, and so I'm just waiting for her to get a little bit better. But if you need it sooner, like I said, I can make sure that gets handled. So the first step is we're going to go into System, Setup, and Fiscal Year Status. So I'm going to go ahead and show you within the system how to do this. And I had already actually opened it, so I'm going to close this. So within System, we're going to go to Setup, Fiscal Year Status. I'm going to click Go. And it's going to give me all the fiscal years that have been created. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and click Copy. And it's just going to copy the setup of the current fiscal year and automatically identify the next fiscal year. There's not much being copied, but it's just a quick way. So I'm going to click Save and Close. And the new fiscal year has been created. Now we're going to roll over the account codes. So to do that, we're going to open up the old fiscal year, meaning the current, which is FY18. Then we're going to click on Tasks, Roll Forward Accounts. And yes, if I go to history, I need to go to open up the FY18 record. Sorry, actually I do need to open up the FY19 record and then go to the history tab. And it'll identify the amount of account codes that were rolled over, which was 439 accounts. And it's simple as that. So what that means now is users can actually see that fiscal year whenever they go and want to add new requisitions. So when this is completed, you might want to forewarn users that they will start seeing this new menu option. Let's see if I click new. So now I have FY18 and 19 available. Okay, so are there any questions on that piece? So the next piece is original budget. So we can create the model and we can do this piece of it at any point in time. So I know that we're not going to have the finalized version until July 1, but I just want to show you how easy it is to complete this process. So to do that, we're going to go to Finance, Budget, and Budget Management. I'm going to show you how to do that in the system. Okay, so we're going to go to Budget and Budget Management. And here we're going to click on New. And we're going to create an original budget for FY 18-19. And I'm going to enter a description of original budget 2019. You can enter whatever you like here. I'm going to click Save and Close. I'm going to reopen it. And it is taking a little bit longer. So click Tasks, Perform Change. And here we're going to just type in a comment. So we're going to say original budget. The type, and this is identified here in the screen, so we're going to select 5. So I'm going to import from a file. I'm going to choose the file, so once we export it from OBMS, there is some formatting that does take place for this file, so it's in the format that schoolAbility requires, which I will assist at that point in time or provide further instructions. So we're going to click Go, and it's going to affect 181 accounts. Say yes. Okay, so it's been imported. So at this point, we're going to want to review it. So I identified several ways that you can review. We can review from this menu by clicking on the snapshot. This snapshot is very it's just cumulative in total by fund. So this is what it would look like. So it's, in this case, this is the 11,000 fund. This is the amount of starting balance. This is the amount of revenue, and this is the amount of expenditures. So right now from this, there is a difference of unappropriated balance of 163, which there shouldn't be. It should zero out. So if there's a difference and you want to look at the detail, there is this report, the Budget 04, that we can generate, and it's going to give us the detail line items for starting balance, revenue, and expenditures for us to review. And then if we identify, oh, there was one piece that was left out that was changed for whatever reason, that's usually not the case, because typically whatever we import or whatever we export from OBMS, that's the amount that should come into the system. But if there's, for any reason, that situation, we can always edit the individual accounts by going into budget entry and then opening up the account and modifying it at that point or at that level. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. I'm going to come to budget entry. We're going to go ahead and select 2019 fiscal year. We're going to select the budget model that we just imported. Click Go. And it's going to give us a listing of all the account codes. We can always sort by the titles up above. But say I want to modify this one. I just open up that record. Open up this record. I can change this record, or I can add a new record and put in an amount and make a note of why we're adding this. Click Save and Close. And then it's going to this is going to be the new value for that account code. I click Save and Close, and I'm done editing, and say I want to post. I close this. I open up the budget management record, which was still open. At this point, I click Tasks, and I submit this model. Because of my permissions, it's going to automatically go into the approved or the adopted status. It's been posted, and now it's adopted. Okay, and you can review the original budget amounts by going to these journal snapshots, which are here. And it'll give us these reports that are in summary by fund. And that's this. So operational and so forth. And then, of course, also running the budget 04. Okay, so now this has been done. There's also this fiscal 04 that you can run to review. I'm not going to run those reports, but just note that it is available to you for more detailed review. Okay, so that's the last piece on fiscal. Prep for fiscal year end rollover. So now the next step is going into the collecting information for prepping for payroll and HR. So what you're going to want to make sure to do is collect all calendars. So if you have multiple calendars for an organization, like say 9-month are all in one and 12-month have a different calendar, you're going to want to make sure you have those details. If there's any changes to salary schedules, we're going to need that. You're going to want to collect that information. And then pay cycles. So those are going to be like the pay dates. And then you're going to also want to start entering in, or at least have a list of non-returning employees. And that way you make sure you enter the termination information into the system. Okay, so what we're going to do first is we're going to review what's involved with the setup of these items. And then we're going to actually roll forward assignments and look at how it will appear in the system after it's rolled forward and what needs to take place at that point in time. So the first step that we're going to review is salary schedules. So if you have no change in a salary schedule and it's remaining the same, then you don't have to make any change. However, if you have changes to the salary schedule, we are going to need to enter an end date, copy, and then make changes to that salary schedule. And then one more piece that we're going to review with the salary schedule is if that salary schedule allows employees to increase by years of experience by going down to the next row, we're going to want to make a change to the setup to allow for that. So let's look at an example of the salary schedule. So we're going to go to HR Payroll. We're going to go to Setup. We're going to go to, we're going to go to Assignment, and we're going to click on Salary Schedules. From here, we're going to click Go so we can look at what salary schedules are available. So the one that I do want to review is the teacher. So I'm going to open up this because I know that with the mandated salary increases, we are going to need to make some changes. Plus, I want to review that field that will allow for that row movement. So that field that I'm referring to is this field here. The majority of records for the salary schedules will have a 0. So just make sure if there's a movement, you need to change that to 1. So I already changed it here, and this can be changed at any time. Next, I'm going to click on Next, I know I'm going to have to end this salary schedule and I'm going to want to copy a new one for the next fiscal year. So I'm going to enter an end date of 6/30, save and close. Then I'm going to click copy. And when I click copy, it's going to automatically copy all the information and automatically set the begin date to the date following the copied record's end date. So it made this 7/1/18. I'm going to click on cell. And now these records are available to me for modification. So I'm going to go ahead and sort by description because it groups all my level 1s together. So in this case, my level 2s are changing, and I'm just going to show you what that means just by changing one of these fields. So my level 2s, I'm going to change this to 44,000. And then I would just continue making the change for each of these fields here. I can, as soon as I hit enter, if I hit the down arrow, it will automatically bring me down to the next row. If you have significant amount of changes on your salary schedule and you prefer to have it imported, please reach out to customer support, and what we'll do is we'll provide the template that was used during implementation, so that way a copy and paste method might be easier. But if you don't have many changes, you can also manually input those changes here. So say I'm done entering in all the changes, I click save and close. I'm making sure that I don't change the ID of the salary schedule. And what that will allow is this schedule to maintain that link to the employee record. The next thing is most organizations will have employees that are not necessarily tied to a salary schedule, but have a fixed salary because they're part of management, or there's just not a salary schedule identified. So in that case, you're going to want to click on this fixed, and if the salaries are changing, which most should, you're going to want to enter an end date. You're going to copy that salary schedule, and then you're going to repeat that same process by clicking on the cells, and each person would be identified in a row, and then you just make a change to that particular employee's record. And that's how this is what's tied to that employee. So just keep in mind that that employee is assigned to that row and column. So you want to make sure that you don't rearrange that. And if you decide you need to, then you're going to have to manually make that change in the employee's record. Okay, one other thing that I just want to have some clarification is on this salary schedule for teachers that did have a movement, what this is going to do is when we roll over positions, because we set that field to 1, it's going to automatically move that employee down a row. So instead of 5 years, for example, they would move down 6. However, if they're moving levels, so it's if they're going to be moving a level, so let me just show you real quick. So what it's doing is it's going to move 1 row down here. That's what it's allowing. But if they're switching to level 2, or even a different education, well, the column is also changing. So what that's going to mean is you're going to have to manually make that change in the employee record. Okay, so I did go over salary schedule changes. And now we're going to look at pay schedules. With pay schedules, what was decided is that schoolAbility was going to provide assistance with setting up the pay schedules and the payroll cycles. However, if you prefer that you want to work on this on your own and you're on your own system, I can definitely show you how to do that. and it is also illustrated here in this PowerPoint. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and skip this piece. What will happen is we will be providing the template of the current salaries, the current pay schedule, and then we're going to ask the business managers to provide us with the changes, and then we'll manually change that in the system. And the pay cycles is just a matter of copying, so it's a really simple process. So we just figured it might as well just be the last step in the process of creating the pay schedules. So we'll go ahead and complete that for all of the users. If there is a change from this year to next year on how individuals get paid, then we definitely want to start having that conversation of what the setup is going to look like. So that way there's enough time to prep for that. Okay, so now we're going to go over calendars. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the system. And it's going to be within HR Payroll Setup, Assignment, Calendars. I'm going to click Go, so it gives me a listing of the current calendars that exist. So I'm going to copy this one, the 9-month, and start entering in the information for next fiscal year. So it automatically set this to 2019. It kept the same name and description. Now, what the system does is it only changes the year on the dates that were currently set up in the current fiscal year. So in this case, if the contract begin date changes, you're going to want to make sure you enter that information here. And if the contract days change in total, you enter that information here. So what the system will do is it actually calculates the number of days based on input here, compares it to what you've entered here, and if there's a difference, it's going to tell you with this little warning sign. So right now, based on just copying over, there's 5-day difference. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say it really is 196. So right here in other, this is the calculation that its system is coming up with from down here. So I'm going to say the number of days actually changed to 196. So now look, it goes away because the two tie. So now below, I start changing the unpaid days below. So it's just a matter of, this needs to be a Monday, and it goes all the way through the 7th. If this no longer exists, you click delete. So you just manipulate the days based on the existing calendar, and it's pretty easy. It's similar to entering leave transactions, where there's a date range that you can use, or you can just select enter one day. When this is done, I'm going to change this to 194 just so you can see. When this is done, I'm going to just click save and close. At that point, this calendar is ready for next fiscal year. And then you just repeat the process for the remaining calendars that are in the system. And the pay cycles, this piece we're going to handle as well, so I'm not going to cover that, but it is here for reference. The next step is we're going to review setup of the existing jobs. Then we would also need to review add-ons or contributions if any of those are changing. So let's take a look at what that means. So I'm going to go ahead and close that screen. We're going to come to HR Payroll, Employment, and Positions. If we have new positions that need to be added based on budget, or if positions need to be removed or changed, we're going to want to make that change here. So I'm going to come to Positions, click Go. So say, for example, you have a teaching position that is no longer going to be filled. What you're going to do is you're going to want to open up this position, and we are going to enter an end date here of 6/30/18. So So let me see. So what we're going to want to do is, I'm going to have to come back to that. I apologize. I'll follow up with an email about that. For right now, it's probably just something simple that I'm missing. So I will follow up with some instructions of how to close out existing positions. If you have a change on, so I'm going to go ahead and click cancel on this for now. If there's a change in the account code, you're going to want to open up that record. You're going to click on accounts. You're going to want to enter an end date here on this record and then copy and make the change. So say it's changing to a federal fund, for example. So we'll enter an end date here of 6/30. Oops, that's not right. Oh, 6/30/18. Copy. So it's the new year, and then I would change this, say 224-101. Save and close. So the next fiscal year, that's the new account code that it's going to use for this position. So you're going to want to review all the positions that are within this menu and make changes according to what you've budgeted. So if you have a new position, you just click, you can either copy an existing one and make the changes, or if it's something entirely new that doesn't exist, you're going to want to create a new one. And this piece here, it's not complicated, but there are some things that need to be considered. So if it's something new, please feel free to reach out to support and we can go over the details of adding a new position that doesn't exist. So now the next step is we're going to want to review any add-ons if applicable. So say, for example, there's a new stipend that needs to be, that's budgeted. We're going to want to make sure that those add-ons are created. And that piece, for the most part, it's not something different. So if you need assistance with this, please feel free to reach out to support. Now, the next step is we're going to actually roll over the position assignments. So the first step is we're going to run this position, the PAS 08 report. And what this is going to tell us is any positions that are not going to roll over. So if you have employees who are not returning, you want to make sure you enter the end date and go through that, your standard process of what fields to enter for termination. So say this person here is no longer going to be returning. By entering in the termination date, what that does is the system will not roll over that individual's assignment of that position. So within this termination, as long as you enter a date here, so say this person is no longer going to return as of the 21st, and they resigned. I'm going to click Save and Close. Now I'm going to go ahead and run that PAS 08 report. So, oops, I meant to click on Position Control. I'm going to open up this report. And you have the option to export or just generate from here. So I'm going to go ahead and select 2018, click Go. So it's going to tell me that these individuals, their positions will not be rolled over. So I entered the termination date for this person. So if there's an individual that you know is not returning and they're not on this list, then it's easier if you do enter the term date. That way it doesn't roll over. Otherwise, when you roll over the positions, you're going to have to remove that position from the employee record as well. Okay, so say now I'm happy with the results. I'm going to go ahead and roll over the positions. We're going to go to System Setup, Fiscal Year Status. I'm going to click Go. And I'm going to open up the 2019. I'm going to click, oops, I'm sorry. It needs to be 2018. Click Tab. and we're going to, wait, hold on, give me a second. Well, I do not know why it's not giving me this roll forward position assignment. So this worked for me when I was testing it. I'm not sure why it didn't pop up now. This is another item that I will follow up with. I apologize. But it's as simple as that. You click on task and roll forward position assignments. And the assignments will then appear in the employee management screen. After you roll over, you're going to want to initiate pay for 2019. Do this at the end of the day, because it can take up it can take a bit of time. And then you can run this report, the POSO 7, to review. And then you're going to want to start making any changes to the employee record. So say, for example, you have an employee that is actually going to be switched from a 0.8 to a 1.0. You're going to want to go to the employee management screen, open up that employee's record. Oops, that's probably not a good one because he's not returning. And then make a change to the assignment record. And so what will happen is you're going to actually see the two records in the assignment tab for FY18 and FY19. So you'll want to make sure you open up FY19 and then make the applicable change. Well, goodness, I'm having some difficulties today. I apologize for this. So like I said, you'll click on assignment, and what would happen is right now this employee actually has 2 positions because they're 1.2, but you're going, if this person was returning, it would have 4 positions, and then you would make a change to the FY19 record. So are there any changes? That's pretty much the setup for HR payroll. So the last piece is reviewing and process the 2018 open finance documents. So what the system does is if you have any open documents that are listed here, the system will not allow you to roll over. So you need to make sure that they are addressed. So what that looks like is we're going to review the AR invoices and vendor requisitions. If you go to finance, processes, and fiscal year and closing, I'm going to click go. Right now it's going to have a lot of records or documents because I still have quite a bit of requisitions or POs that are open. So as long as you're keeping up to date with closing out those documents, then you shouldn't have too many that generate within this screen. There is also, well, that's generating, there's also a report that you can generate, which is this one here, fiscal year end 99. This report will identify all these open documents and give you more descriptive information so you know if this item needs to be closed or what action to take on that particular document. So it's still generating. So what will happen is the list will appear as such, and then you're going to have some columns here that identify, do you want it to accrue, do you want it to carry over, or do you want it to release? For the most part, most of us are not going to use this column called accrual because we're cash basis or modified, semi-modified accrual, if you say that. Now, if we want it to carry over, we're going to want to enter the amount within the carryover field. But say in this case here, we want only $320 of this $440 requisition that's outstanding to carry over, and the remaining balance to release. We would just enter that amount here, enter the 320 on carryover, and then the system will actually roll over just the $320 requisition. Within the process column here, this is where we tell the system, take action on this item. So you can start in different steps or different times, address these requisitions. So say I know for sure this one is going to carry over because I'm not going to receive it this one I know is going to be this amount, but I don't know, I'm not sure about this requisition. I just mark the ones that I want to address as yes, make the applicable changes, and then you click on task, and I believe it's called post. Right now I am having issues with my system. I'm not sure what's happening. So I'm going to go ahead and just continue with using the PowerPoint. After you click tasks and post, this is an example of how the requisition will appear in the FY19. So when you open up that record, it's gonna, and you click on the accounts tab, it's gonna show the original, this case, we said we wanted this one posted as an accrual of $225.40. So if we use that, it'll actually accrue it. Then we're saying we want the liability to post. So in this case, this is the account code that we're using for the liability. So in the new year, the requisition, when we pay it, it's actually going to pay out to that liability. So this is just an example. More than likely, you're not going to use this, but I just wanted to show you what it would look like if you do utilize that feature. This one is more, resembles what we would use. So this one is a carryover. So what it's going to show is the amount in FY19 that's carrying over of $320. So it shows the different fiscal years. And then this one shows you in FY18 that the encumbrance has zeroed out because we wanted it to release that encumbrance. So that release is going to show up in the adjustment amount field within the requisition on the first tab. And then this is an example of a combination of carryover and release. So it released $1,487, so that's the adjustment. And then in the new year, only $1,000 is being carried over of the fiscal year rollover, which we just, within this section here, when you take action, you mark that as yes. That's the process where it's actually rolling over that particular requisition. The next part with the rest of the documents. So if you run this fiscal 15 report, it's going to identify all these outstanding documents that you may have open. So if you have any journal entries that have not been posted, they need to be addressed. And if it's not going to post, you need to delete them. The same with receipts, invoices, payments. So nothing can be outstanding. In this report, it's going to tell you what items are still outstanding. So in this case, these payrolls are still open because they need to be processed. These are outstanding payments. So they're in the open status or approved. So what you're going to want to do is either delete, cancel any invoices. And then after all of this is done and you have nothing outstanding, then you can actually close the fiscal year. So to do that, you're going to be in System Setup Fiscal Year. You're going to click on Fiscal Year End Checklist. When you click on that, it must be blank, and it triggers the task for the remaining pieces of the closing process. So that report must be blank, meaning that you have no open records. Then you're going to click on Tasks, and you're going to close the fiscal year. What this does is it's like a temporary hold to allow, that prevents users from making any more transactions against the current fiscal year, FY18. You can always remove that if you need to post another journal entry. This just allows a business manager to make their final reviews. Then the next step is it's within that same area, you're going to click Tasks and you're going to create the closing journal entry. You'll want to review it. So by clicking on journal entries, you can review that JE type. And this is just an example of what it would look like. So what will happen is, based on the setup, all of the revenue account codes will post to the 32200 fund balance object code. All of the expenses will post to the 32300 object code. I'm sorry, all the expenses will post to the 32100 account code. And then the difference between the two will post to the 32300, which is going to be the year-end fund balance. Then you're going to actually post the closing journal entry. Then the next step is creating the starting balance journal entries. So it's just a matter of clicking on tasks and within the FY19 and then clicking on creating starting balance journal entries. You're going to want to review it by the same as when you were reviewing the closing. This is an example of what it will look like. So in this case, all of your beginning fund balance is going to post to the 32,000. After you review it and it looks good, you're going to post. And that is pretty much it. I wanted to show you all what it looks like, or some resources that you have access to. There's always the how-to. There's within the schoolAbility online resources, or the Escape online resources. This tutorial will also be posted. And then there's also so this tutorial will be posted to the YouTube channel, but then there's also this knowledge base. I'm not sure if you all had seen that, but if you click on the finance knowledge base, a lot of the instructions are located here. There are a couple of pieces that I do need to follow up on that I did take note of, and but also there's one section that I wasn't sure, and that's the direct payments that are created from payroll liabilities. As I mentioned before, that there cannot be any outstanding records. And so being that we cannot pay out some of those direct payments, I just need to ask for clarification how we're going to handle those. So I will follow up with that for you as well. You shall be receiving an email probably early next week with the material. But if you have any other questions or you want to go over this more thoroughly on a one-on-one basis, please let me know and we can arrange that. Otherwise, I think that's all. Thank you for attending.